What is going on, guys? David Braga back here with my full official bracket. Obviously, this is the first ever perfect bracket. I shouldn't even have to really explain to you guys, a whole bunch of anything. This is definitely going to be the first ever perfect bracket, 100%. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I actually know all the scores too, but in order to keep the honesty and integrity of the game, I can't actually tell you guys that. So we're going to start up here in the East bracket. North Dakota State obviously winning their play-in game. However, that's as far as they're going to get. They're not going to beat Duke. Moving down to the 8-9 game, VCU against UCF. I've gone back and forth on this one between VCU and UCF. I just think VCU is I don't know. They're just going to win, I suppose. They give up less points a game. They don't have as many games in the top 25, and UCF's got 2 wins. So, that could be something that helps them out. The BPI rank, VCU slightly higher. VCU is better in their conference, and they score slightly less games. VCU lost at Virginia by 8, at Texas. They won by 1. They beat Temple, who's in the tournament, by 6, and they lost to St. John's by 1. UCF split with Houston, split with Cincinnati, split with Temple, and then went 1-2 against Memphis. So, I just think VCU, UCF's resume here, splitting with everybody, to me is not as impressive as losing to a number 1 seed by 8, winning at a Big 12 school, and being really close with 2 of the play-in teams. Moving down to the 5-12, first real upset of the game. I've got Liberty over Mississippi State. I don't think Mississippi State should be a 5. If this was any other 5 seed, I think I'd probably pick them to beat Liberty. If Liberty was any of the other 12 seeds, I'd still probably pick them to beat Mississippi State. So I've got Liberty moving on. Virginia Tech, St. Louis. This one could be an upset, but I think Virginia Tech is just too strong for St. Louis, so they'll move on. Maryland Belmont. I'm actually going to go ahead and flip this one right now in front of you guys, so you know that. So you guys know that I flipped it. I've actually got Belmont. I had Maryland until I saw that Belmont was going to hold out until that play-in game. Belmont ended up getting the W's, and I think they continue that momentum. I think they're going to carry on right past Maryland to move into the round of 32. LSU and Yale. You guys can already see my national champion, but don't look at that. Actually, I can probably just leave it here. LSU and Yale. This one's going to be a popular upset pick. LSU's got a lot of issues going on inside and outside the locker room, but I still think they're just good enough to move on. Louisville and Minnesota. The Patino battle in Des Moines. I will not be at that game, unfortunately, but I do think Louisville comes out on top, and Michigan State over Bradley, the Missouri Valley Conference champions. Moving on to the round of 32, Duke over VCU. Duke is just way too good. Virginia Tech over Liberty. ACC matchup here in the Sweet 16. I've also got LSU moving on past Belmont. Belmont's Cinderella story ends here. And Michigan State over Louisville. Moving on to the Elite 8, I've got Duke and Michigan State moving. In the Sweet 16, I've got Duke and Michigan State moving on. So we've got a 1 versus 2 matchup. For the Final Four, which I've got Michigan State winning. I've got Michigan State dethroning Zion Williamson and Duke in the Elite 8. I think Duke's season ends there, and Michigan State moves on to the Final Four. As we head on over to the South region, Gardner-Webb and Virginia. Virginia's not going to lose to a 16 seed again, are they? It's not going to happen again, right? So I picked Virginia solely based on that. If you don't pick Virginia based on anything else, you pick them for that reason. I got to go with the Big 12 here. I watched Iowa State play Ole Miss, and I think Oklahoma is better than Ole Miss. So I just went with Oklahoma there. Wisconsin-Oregon is going to be a popular upset pick here in the 5-12 matchup in the South region. While I don't actually like Oregon. I like Oregon as a team, but I don't like them to pull off this upset. And I'll use the same logic that I used in the Arizona State St. John's matchup, because that went so well. The Pac-12 is not very good. Oregon won Oregon won the Pac-12 conference tournament, and they're a 12 seed. I think that alone should tell you everything you need to know about the Pac-12. I'm going with Wisconsin in the Big Ten to take out the 12 seed Oregon. Kansas State and UC Irvine. This is also going to be a very popular upset pick. Kansas State, probably without Dean Wade as they start the tournament against UC Irvine. I still think Kansas State is good enough to win without Dean Wade. I'll question moving forward against Wisconsin and maybe Virginia at that point whether or not they can win without him. Moving on to the 6-11, this is a very interesting matchup. So we've got Villanova coming out of the Big East and St. Mary's, who won the West Coast Conference tournament. I think people are going to pick St. Mary's just because they beat Gonzaga not that long ago. I think that's a mistake. I think Villanova is a very, very good team here coming out of the Big East. They've struggled a little bit this year, hence why they're a 6th seed. But I think you put them in the tournament in a environment that they're very familiar with, very comfortable with. I think you'll end up seeing Villanova advance. Purdue, Old Dominion. I don't know that this game will be close. I don't know a whole lot about Old Dominion, but I will roll with the Boilermakers. Cincinnati, Iowa. I hate this draw for both teams. This is a horrible draw for both of these teams. I think Iowa is probably a 9 over a 10. I would have had them at a 9, which not much better since you have to play the 1 seed if you win. But to play 7 seed Cincinnati should not be a 7. I don't know why Cincinnati's a 7 after being I think they were basically ranked the whole season. And then they ended up beating Houston in their conference tournament, who's a 3 seed. So either Houston needs to not be a 3 seed or Cincinnati needs to be a lot higher than a 7. I think this is a terrible draw. I've got Cincinnati moving on over the Hawkeyes. And Tennessee will dismantle Colgate. Unfortunately for the toothpaste, sorry Colgate, your tournament ends where it begins. Moving on to the round of 32, I've got Virginia over Oklahoma. I think Virginia can slow down the tempo. I don't know that Oklahoma is good enough to take down a 1 seed just yet, but I do think they're good enough to get to the round of 32. Virginia will advance. Wisconsin and Kansas State. I'm actually going to flip this one too. Kansas State, you guys know I love the Big 12. I love Kansas State. This is going to be a really grindy matchup. This one might be, actually come to think of it, the whole South region, not going to be very fun to watch, especially you get into this top half of the bracket, Virginia, Wisconsin, and Kansas State. All 3 of those teams really like to slow down the ball, grind you out, and I think Wisconsin, assuming Kansas State is still without Dean Wade, this could cost me if Dean Wade ends up playing in this game. Assuming Kansas State is without Dean Wade, I think they can beat a UC Irvine team. I don't think they can compete with the talent. Ethan Happ is going to be a huge role in this game. I think Wisconsin's going to advance over Kansas State. Again, assuming there's no Dean Wade here. This is a big question mark for me as to whether or not Dean Wade plays in this game. If they do play him, it's probably limited in UC Irvine. I'd assume he's not playing, but I've got Wisconsin beating him here. Purdue, Villanova, this one could very easily go either way. I've gone with Purdue. I think they've had a better overall season. Villanova's kind of been up and down. Purdue's just been a very consistent team. And Tennessee, Cincinnati, I've got Tennessee going a long way in this tournament, and I don't think Cincinnati is just quite good enough to beat them. Moving on to the Sweet 16, I've got Virginia over Wisconsin and Tennessee over Purdue. Virginia-Wisconsin, I believe, is a rematch of a game that happened earlier this year that I believe Virginia won. Let's see if ESPN's got any info on that. Yeah, Virginia, they lost 7 to Virginia. If I remember correctly, that game was like 48-41 or something like that, or 45-38 or something like that. It was a very low-scoring game, which is, again, what these teams like to do, and I think Virginia is just better at it. And Tennessee over Purdue, we've got another 1 versus 2 matchup. I tried to not just go chalk because the likelihood of that happening is very low. But as you can see, I ended up with the 1 and the 2. I did go with the 2 in both situations, though. So we've got Michigan State and Tennessee moving on to the Final Four. As we move on down into the West region, we've got Gonzaga over Fairleigh Dickinson. In the 8-9 matchup, Baylor over Syracuse. Marquette is going to beat Ja Morant and Murray State. This is another unfortunate matchup. You've got two of the better players in this tournament, if not the two best players in this tournament, excluding Zion Williamson, in Ja Morant and Marcus Howard, and one of them is not going to be dancing after one round. So, unfortunate draw there, selection committee. I'm not going to say they got this wrong. I think both of these seeds are fairly correct. But, just unfortunate to see one of them go out. I've got Marcus Howard getting the better of Ja Morant and Murray State in this one. Moving on to the 4-13, Florida State, Vermont. I think Florida State's just too good. I think Florida State's a really good 4 seed in this tournament. And don't look ahead to their next game. Buffalo against Arizona State. Like I said, Arizona State, the Pac-12 is not very good. As you'll notice, I don't have any of the Pac-12 teams advancing, which is, I don't think they're very good, guys. It worked out so well for me picking St. John's yesterday, so we'll keep sticking with it. Buffalo over Arizona State in the 6-11. Texas Tech, another team that can really beat you defensively, and I don't think that North Kentucky can keep up with Texas Tech's pace. They like to slow it down, but they can really run and gun when they need to, and I think Texas Tech is going to go very far in this tournament. Nevada and Florida, this one I've gone back and forth so many times on this one. I'm going with the Wolfpack for one reason and one reason only. Hallis Cook. And for those of you that don't know who that is, Iowa State transfer, went to Nevada. He's playing in Des Moines, and, Nevada, they're going to get it done. Nevada's going to get it done, you guys. Michigan State, or excuse me, Michigan fans are going to hate me for that one. Michigan over Montana. Moving on to the round of 32, I've got Gonzaga advancing. Marquette over Florida State in the 5 versus 4. I like Marquette. I like Marcus Howard. I think they turn around their Big East tournament performance. I think they go far in this tournament. Texas Tech over Buffalo. Again, I really like this Texas Tech team. They did stumble against West Virginia, who really turned it on at the end of the year. But again, that could be, Power 5 conferences, in my opinion, the best conference in the country, along with the ACC, just beating up on each other. So, I like Texas Tech to go a long way in this tournament, so I really hope they don't let me down. But like I said, this bracket's perfect, so, don't have to worry about it. Michigan over Nevada. Hallis Cook, I'm sorry, buddy. Your run-ins against a really stingy Michigan team. Moving on, Gonzaga over Marquette here in the Sweet 16, as well as Texas Tech over Michigan. Like I said, I love this Texas Tech team. I really like them to go far in this tournament, and I think they've got a pretty good draw in the West, going up against teams like Gonzaga, Buffalo, and North Kentucky. I think they've got a really good draw. This Texas Tech-Michigan game, if it happens, and by if, I mean when, because obviously, like I said, this bracket's perfect. This is going to be a really fun game to watch. Texas Tech, Michigan. I'll be really interested to watch this game. I will definitely have my eyes glued to the television while that's going on. Texas Tech over Michigan. Moving on. And then they also take down the 2-seed Gonzaga. I really like Texas Tech coming out of the West to move on to the Final Four. Heading over to the Midwest. North Carolina over Iona. Utah State over Washington. Pac-12 is not that good, guys. Don't pick the Pac-12 teams. Auburn over New Mexico State, and Kansas over Northeastern. These are going to be two really popular upset picks again in the 5-12 and 4-13 matchups. And as much as I would love to pick Northeastern, because I don't particularly like Kansas in the Big 12, not just because I don't like Kansas, but because they are struggling. They've lost a bunch of guys. Azubuike is out. LeGerald Vick transferred, and I think they've had one or two other guys that have left the team or been suspended for whatever reason. I just think that Bill Self, he's not going to let himself and that team lose to a 13 seed, so I like Kansas to move on. And Auburn, man, did you see that SEC championship game? That was incredible. Auburn, Tennessee, that game was incredible. I like Auburn to move on. They're rolling on a high note. I like them to move on to play Kansas in the round of 32. Iowa State and Ohio State. Iowa State is going to get revenge for the Aaron Kraft game. God, it makes me so angry just thinking about it. Iowa State's going to get their revenge on Ohio State and move on to play Houston. I don't really think anyone's got Georgia State winning this game. I really like this Houston team. I really wish they would have won their conference tournament, and I might have had them going a little bit further. But Cincinnati showed how to beat them, and I think Steve Prohm will have his guys ready for this game that we'll talk about in just a second. Wofford, Seton Hall. This is another game that I've gone back and forth on. But come on, man. You got to pick Wofford, right? I'm sorry, Seton Hall. You got to pick Wofford in that game. And Kentucky over Abilene Christian in the 215. Moving on, we've got North Carolina and Utah State. I like North Carolina to win this game. North Carolina I really like as a team. I like them to go a long ways. Auburn over Kansas, like I said. Auburn is rolling high, and Kansas is on a bit of a low. And those are not two teams that you want to, those are not pathways that you want to have cross. Auburn's going to shoot right by Kansas. Literally, they're going to shoot their way, with a lot of three-pointers. They're going to do that, and they're going to move their way right into the next round. Iowa State over Houston. I've seen a couple of people pick this, and I got to say, I think Iowa State is going to be ready for Houston. I think Cincinnati showed Steve Prohm and his guys how to win. Obviously, I'd rather have Georgia State move on, but I really like this Houston team. But, man, I cannot pick against Iowa State. Come on, guys. You guys know I'm a Cyclone fan. I'm going to pick Iowa State in this one. And they'll move on to face Kentucky. I'm sorry, Wofford. I really wanted to pick you guys in this game. Wofford, the best three-point shooting team, and Kentucky, one of the worst, I believe, or at least a majority of their shots are not three-pointers, so they'll probably need to step out a couple more times than they'd like to, but I do think that Kentucky moves on. Moving on to the Sweet 16. I like North Carolina over Auburn. Auburn, your SEC tournament championship run comes to an end here against North Carolina. It carried you further than what I would have normally expected through this tournament, but unfortunately it comes to an end against the Tar Heels. Iowa State over Kentucky. This game's being played in Kansas City. This game's in Hilton South. You gotta love Iowa State over Kentucky at Hilton South, and I even like Iowa State over North Carolina in Hilton South. Iowa State has won 4 of the last 6 Big 12 tournaments in that building. They've knocked off teams like Kansas, Baylor. They beat Kansas State this year in the second round. They've beaten really good West Virginia teams. Look, this Iowa State team knows how to win in Kansas City. They're going to get it done over 2 of the Blue Bloods. They've got a 3rd Blue Blood there in Kansas in their region. But they're going to face North Carolina and Kentucky, and they're going to beat them both in Kansas City. They're going to move on to the Final Four, where I've got them losing to Tennessee, and on the other end, I like this Michigan State team, boys and girls. Sorry, I don't want to leave anybody out. I'd hate to offend people. I got Michigan State moving on over Texas Tech, so I've got 2 Big 12 teams making the Final Four, and neither of them winning, which really pains me to do. But I like Michigan State, and as you can see, the tiebreaker score here, 72-65. It's very rare to see a really high-scoring championship. It's very rare to see a very low-scoring championship game, so I went right in the middle. Low 70 to mid to high 60 is what I typically go with, and that's exactly what we got here, 72-65. Michigan State, we're going to go ahead and submit that right there. Michigan State, the Spartans, congratulations, because as I've said, this is a perfect bracket, 100% perfect. Michigan State, congratulations. They're going to cut down the nets in Minneapolis. The Spartans are your NCAA 2019 tournament champions. I'll see you guys next time for some reviews of games. It is currently very early in the morning, and I'm getting ready for class. I don't know when this video will be up, but yeah, see you guys next time.